Okay, hello year 12. As you would be aware, I have today shared this final revision booklet with you. We will talk about it more in class on Monday. But what I want to do right now is I want to fast forward straight through to comparative section B because I've just been marking your section B responses on the exam. And what I want to do is I want to unpack some questions really quickly. So I might do 5 screencasts that each go for 5 minutes, okay? So we're going to start here with question 1, all right? So I've given you 6 questions for revision over the next 10 days, all right? If you ever want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on the human face. Forever, 1984. He who puts himself in danger will die. Stasiland. Compare what the two texts say about the threat of punishment as a means of control. Punishment, control, key words there. All right, so here are my ideas for paragraphs. If you disagree, that is amazing because what we want is some individuality. But here's where my mind went, and I wrote this up before so I didn't have a mental blank. Totalitarianism and control. Thanks for that one, John Walker. We go with our basic paragraph here. We've talked about this heaps in class, so what can we say? Well, we need to say that in 1984 the control is ever present, and we might talk about the tally screens, and we might use the quote that even a back can be revealing. All right, and we might talk about the shrewish voice that screamed for Smith W to touch his toes. That's not exactly the quote. I'm sure you can double check that for me though. So you might say that in the opening pages of 1984, George Orwell seeks to establish the extent to which the ruling party of Oceania control the everyday lives of citizens. And then you would do your compare. So you would go to Stasiland, all right? So in Stasiland, you might talk about the fact that at first Funda laughs at the extent of the control. This is when she's at the Rundeneck, that museum, and she sees the smell samples. However, the example of Miriam, who became an enemy of the state at 16, reveals the serious nature of this control. So you would say that both 1984 and Stasiland highlight a strong level of control over the daily lives of the citizens of the former GDR and Oceania. Alright, that would be your basic structure for that paragraph. Alright, that's not working for me. There we go. And then you would say flow of information. So let's go back to our question. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face, blah, 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 danger, die, punishment, means of control. Flow of information. The flow of information is restricted significantly in both texts, which limits the ability of the citizens to rebel against any form of punishment enforced upon them. In 1984, citizens are made to believe that life is better than before, and they are so, I want to say brainwashed, but subjugated to the propaganda that they believe the punishment is justified. The example of this would be Parsons, and he's down with Big Brother. I misspelled propaganda, I forgot the A there. Alright, if we then compare that to Stasiland, let me just go back because that's topic sentence, more or less. It's a crappy one, don't use it. Stasiland flow of information, we could talk about Miriam and the threat against speaking out regarding Charlie's death in the remand cell. And we might use the example of the funeral and the informers and the extent to which the Stasi impacted her daily life. And we would say that the example of the threats made against Miriam not to pursue Charlie's death are an example of the flow of information preventing the punishment. And the other example I've just thought of for that, you could talk about Julia, and she says, I didn't like it, but I thought, and I think this is the quote, it's the way it was. And hot tip, if you need to check quotes, get the digital version and search them. I didn't like it, so that's just how it is. So I have my quote wrong. So if we put in brackets back, but it's just how it is. Unaware due to the lack of information that the searches she was subjected to, as a result of the Italian boyfriend, which are a form of punishment, or at least a threat, anything unusual. Can't spell. In this way, the flow of information means that citizens accept their punishment, thus allowing the dictatorships to maintain their, I should have this on voice checks, control. Dictatorships, yep. Alright, final paragraph, trust. And I've said it doesn't exist anymore. Let's go back. Compare what the two texts say about punishment as a means of control. Punishment and trust. Where was I going with that? I am saying because, and suddenly we've got no highlighting, because of the threat of punishment, trust no longer exists between citizens, as they are afraid of the likelihood they will be betrayed. This is seen in 1984 through through Winston and Julia. Why? They form a relationship. However, this relationship becomes their downfall and they betray each other. I betrayed you is the quote. Oops, however. And the other quote is, in the face of pain, comma, there are no heroes. So trust, it doesn't exist. Come back to the question, think about it. The threat of punishment. Trust doesn't exist because they are concerned. Trust doesn't, I better write this down, exist because they are likely to betray each other, thus facing punishment. Oops. In Stasiland, we see this through Julia again and the Italian boyfriend. They attempt, by they I mean the Stasi, attempt to make her inform on the boyfriend. And I can't remember what the threat was. And of course, if you were in the same boat, you would go back and you'd say, you would find it. There was no question is the quote. Major N. He was showing me he had me in the palm of his hand is perfect. As a quote, he was showing me he had me in the palm of his hand. This is a threat, and of course what happens to Julia is that in refusing to inform, her later life continues to be impacted. So she is punished for maintaining trust. And the quote I would use is that she was like a hermit crab, soft-shelled and fleshy, ready to whip, I think, back into her shell at the slightest sign of human contact. Is the quote. Let's double check our quotes. This is important at this point in our revision. Hermit crab. She is a hermit crab, all soft-fleshed with friends, but ready to whisk back into its shell at the slightest sign of contact. I can't copy, which is annoying. Miss Brooks's version copies. A hermit crab, all soft-shelled. A hermit crab, all soft-shelled. Whip back into her shell at the slightest sign, and I put ready in brackets, human contact, right? So you're saying that trust doesn't exist, and when trust does exist, they are trust doesn't exist, and when it does, in the case of Stasiland, the individual is punished for it. You could argue that trust is only in the regime. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that made some sense. We've been through question 1, which is compare what the two texts say about the threat of punishment as a means of control. Remember not to be too concerned. I don't know what I did to the word Stasiland. If you get 2 quotes, okay? Read the quotes, figure out where they're from in each book and what they relate to, and then it should have some kind of statement, okay? Such as punishment, means of control. If it does not have a statement, write yourself one. What do you think the statement would say if it had a statement? And then state in your introduction that that's what you're responding to. That is my advice. Do not be scared of quotes, okay? Do not let these scare you away. Hopefully this helps. Good luck with your revision.